All right. What's up, everybody? Today we are going to be talking about turkeys. Just got back from a turkey trip and yeah, just had a few things on my mind. Lessons learned, lessons reminded, that type of thing. So I'm going to run through 10 basically turkey tips. Not necessarily my favorite 10 or most important 10, just pretty much the 10 that came up on my last trip. We ended up getting two turkeys and two misses. I was not on the gun at all. I was hunting with some friends in Missouri and then my grandpa and dad in Illinois. So this is just kind of what I was reminded of on these hunts, and yeah. So the first one was something that I, should know for certain by now, but almost every time I get out, I get reminded. And you try to play the best you can. But this is just make sure the decoys are placed in as visible of a spot as you possibly can. Even if it's slightly farther away. I personally think that setting a decoy at 25 yards, but on a high spot, 25 yards away, but on a high spot where turkeys can see from any direction or coming in, is better than, 10, 15 yards, but maybe in a dip, or they can only see it from coming from your left or from your right or straight on. We got burnt a few times, I think, by having the decoys, what we thought was, 10 to 15 yards in a perfect spot for us. But I don't think that the birds could fully see it. And then they, got hesitant. And we're hard to work in and hesitant to come in. And a few even skirted at us, all that stuff. So especially running the gun, you it's always chaos trying to get set up, especially if a bird's close. And you may not always just think of that thing in the moment, but try to find that high spot where no matter where that bird comes in from, he can see. So, because that's the first thing they're looking for, that, they're 100% dependent on their eyesight. They're looking for what is making those calling sounds. There is an example when we were running and gunning in the timber, and we had a lone hen in front of us, I don't know, probably 25 yards or so. And it was kind of grown up, but I don't think we had a perfect setup for the first tree we sat in, but we actually sat on an anthill, so we moved back, and there were birds coming in, so we didn't make time to change the decoy setup after we moved back on a different tree. And I don't think that decoy was necessarily set up the best for birds coming in the thick timber. I think from afar it probably had some vegetation blocking, birds' views to the decoy. We had two birds come in, and they literally looked at us while I was calling for 20 to 30 minutes. I don't think they could see the decoy, and they came in super hesitant and kind of started skirting from where we wanted them to come in. And then another example was on my grandpa's hunt. We had them coming right in. It was a gobbler, a few jakes, and a few hens, and I called to them, and it looked like they were coming in on a string, and they started skirting us at about 40 yards and going the other way. And we ended up shooting that bird at about 40, but I analyzed our setup when we got out, and I don't think they could see the decoys we had set up 10, 15 yards in front of us. So they started skirting us because, that makes them nervous when they can't see what's calling, especially only 40 yards away. So, yeah, that one was probably the biggest, thorn in the side on my hunts this year so far. Just if you're using decoys, make sure that you set them in as high of a spot as possible. And then the second one, you're never going to beat live hens. You can call the hens in, but the gobblers are going to pick the live hens over you. I don't know if I've seen, maybe a curious one, maybe, a younger bird or a Jake, but man, it's tough if you're going to try to compete with live hens. You can call the live hens in that they go to, and the best way I've seen that, the best way I've seen to do this is cutting that lead hen, the boss hen, lead hen, whatever you want to call her. If she yelps at all, that is a perfect opportunity for you to get that group in. If she starts yelping, cut her off on your calling sequence as much as you can, as aggressive as you can. Get her mad and get her worked up, and then that whole group may end up coming in with the gobblers. But there is multiple times on these hunts this year that we just simply lost to live hens, and there's not much you can do there. Just wait it out until they go to nest and leave the gobblers. But I guess the strategy there is basically understand the situation. Basically try to call the hen in if you can, or just stay patient and try to get on them. Understand where they're going with those hens and try to make a move on them when you think that those hens might leave them. So that was 2 and 3. The best way to call a hen in was to cut them off, was number 3. The fourth one, know the terrain around you and what can hang a bird up. And so I had 2 instances. One was a property fence. 3 gobblers were on the other side of this property fence. And I think it was just barbed wire. And they stayed 120, 150 yards in the timber, would not cross this fence. They were gobbling every time I called, but they just did not want to cross that fence. And for some reason, turkeys are weird like that, and they'll do weird things and hang up on weird things, and certain things will make them nervous, certain things won't. We had another instance where those 2 gobblers that were hesitant on the timber setup, they came from our right, and they were actually across a pretty decent creek, and I was kind of nervous about that. And they stood did not move a muscle for 20 to 30 minutes while I called at them, and they just did not want to cross that creek. I think it would have been no question, 2 gobblers by themselves, hen calling at them. I think it would have been no question if there wasn't a creek there, and or they could easily see the decoy. But if stayed calling on them, stayed persistent calling, and eventually got them to cross the creek. So it's not impossible to get them across what they're hanging up on, but it's definitely beneficial to know what terrain you're working with and what might hang them up. Because if we hadn't known that creek was there, we probably would have thought they moved off. They were hard to see. Probably would have thought they moved off and everything, and possibly would have spooked them or stopped calling at them and never got them to come in. But we knew that creek was there, so we figured that was a possible hang up there and why they were taking so long. And then number 5, don't give up so easy on gobblers if they're being hesitant, or don't pick you right away. So this kind of goes with the terrain and the hens. Don't give up right away. If they go off with live hens, it's still possible to pull them off. As soon as those hens leave them, they're going to be looking again. And another one is, if they don't come in right away because something's hanging them up, just take your time, wait it out and keep calling at them, whatever the situation is. But just because they don't pick you right away, we had a situation where we were not patient enough, we had hens on our side of the field roosted, and we had gobblers on the other side of the field roosted. And the plan was our hens would fly down in the field right by us, and then the gobblers across the field would probably come to these live hens first thing in the morning. Well, the hens flew down and went to the gobblers across the field. So we knew that probably wasn't good. We tried to call them in, and they did what they typically do with live hens and hung up at about 100 yards strutting, two gobblers with a few hens, and they wanted us to come to them because they had their hens. And then they worked the other way, and they were gobbling back. They were calling. The hens were yelping, everything. They were talking to us. They just didn't want to come fully in. They had their own plan. And so they went off into the woods in front of us. And we actually moved the blind as soon as they went in the woods to the far tree line, because we would have killed had we been on that far tree line in the morning. And sure enough, they come back out at 9:30 when the hens, aren't ready, aren't wanting to be around them yet. And they went right to where we had the blind in the morning, because they had remembered where we were calling, and went right back to there as soon as their hens weren't ready. And so the lesson there is like, don't give up so easily or change something. They have their own agenda. Take your time, wait it out. They're probably going to be more susceptible to calling as soon as those hens leave them. So that was an example of just, basically giving up on gobblers and not being patient enough. Number 6, I'd say double check your setup before birds come in. You need to be, it's almost never perfect, unless you get a bird in the right mood. But you need to be able to shoot as many angles as possible, as 360 as you possibly can, or if you're in a blind, as 180 as you possibly can, because you never know what kind of situation the gobblers are going to come in. Had a few examples of this on the past few hunts. We had one set up where we were on the basically like a fence tree line, and we were set up. I was on the camera, and my two buddies were on the guns. I was all the way on the right, another buddy in the middle, and another one on the left. And the friend in the middle was up first to shoot, and then the friend on the left was going to shoot second and hopefully double. And these birds came from our right, so I was kind of in a off position. I was in a perfect position for the camera, but preferably would have had a gun in that situation because I was the first one. But they came and so we had hens work in and work into our decoys, and they started working off. And then the gobblers came in from our right and basically came out into the field right in between us and the live hens at, 15, 20 yards. And the middle friend felt like he, too many eyes. There was 7 turkeys within 30 yards looking because they're coming in to our decoys, and didn't want to spook them by trying to move and get his gun swung around to the right. And then he also didn't want to, shoot too close to me being on the right. And then the friend on the left didn't want to shoot until the friend in the middle got a shot. So that was an example of where we all, the entire group could have done better on making sure, making sure I was positioned better with the camera to where he felt comfortable swinging and shooting right if he needed to. And then, him either moving slowly while they're coming in and trying not to get picked off, or making sure he's set up to where he can shoot that way before they come in. And then another example was on my grandpa's morning hunt. We were actually in a tower blind. He had a bad knee, so we drove him straight to the tower blind in the morning, and got him in there. And uh, they started skirting us at 40 yards, and we only had two windows open where we thought they were going to come in, and where they were going, the window was not open, and I was in the way. So we had three people in the blind, and we all three had to get up, fold our chairs up. I had to open the window for him to shoot, readjust the camera, all this while these birds are at 40 yards. And that's tough because you don't want to open too many windows, and you want to be set up perfect for where you think they're going to come in. But you have to be ready for anything, all angles. You never know what they're going to do. And honestly, I think you have to be able to understand how to move in those situations, because it's never going to be perfect. But yeah, just double checking your setup, making sure nobody's in the way of your shot if you're with a group. If you have a camera, making sure the camera's not in the way, making sure the way the shooter is situated can shoot as 180 or 360 as possible. And then number 7, I'd say be ready to shoot. I think turkey hunting gets very. I think only the highlights get shown, I guess. When you're, say, watching a show or looking at social media, I think a lot of people's perception of how it's going to happen is, perfect strutter, 10, 15 yards, just basically waiting to be shot right in front of you, oblivious to what's going on. But in my experience, more often than not, they're going to, especially if you're running gun or timber setup or that type of thing, you're not going to get that a lot. You're probably going to get a bird looking for a decoy. You might get a bird that's hesitant, popping their head around, or if there's live hens around, they're probably leaving to find to go straight to those hens. I think a lot of people have, too high of expectations on the way it's going to happen. For example, like my grandpa's bird, if we thought he was going to come straight in the decoys and put on a show, but the second you read his body language on his decision to go right and skirt us, if we had just, if we weren't ready to shoot and noticed that, we wouldn't have killed him. We would have thought he was coming in and waiting for that perfect, strut moment. But I don't think it happens like that very often. And then, running gun or timber setups, you've been calling at them. If they're coming in on a running gun or timber setup, they're looking hard, and they're probably already nervous. So I think, especially in the timber, if you got, you see that head poke at anything less than 40 yards, I think you got to take that first shot you get, because it's almost never perfect, especially if they're hesitant or hens nearby or running gun setups, anything like that. I don't think it's very rarely going to be perfect. Especially for new turkey hunters, I think that's a very common expectation. And everyone has their own ways they want to hunt them, and especially if you're hunting them with a bow, that you pretty much have to wait for that perfect strutter 10, 15 yards in the decoys, and that does make it harder. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think that's very common. You have to get a bird in the perfectly right mood. No hens to mess it up. He doesn't pick anything off. He's completely susceptible to your calling. He's ready to fight the decoy or strut for the hen decoy. Just a lot of factors have to line up to get that situation. And then number 8, don't be afraid to move if you need to. I think, don't get me wrong, turkeys have amazing eyesight. I'm not discrediting them, but I think people do give them a little bit too much credit. I think, especially with today's camo and face mask and stuff like that, and especially if a bird's strutting or anything like that, you can move very slowly if you need to say shoot, get out of the way so your friend can shoot, get resituated. If you're filming, move your camera around, stuff like that. I mean, think how many tall grasses, limbs, etc. like they see moving in the wind, stuff like that. And obviously, you don't want to move more than you need to, but I don't think that staying completely still and letting a turkey go is better than making the moves you need to, even when they're close, to get that shot. I think, if the turkeys are leaving, turkeys are leaving, why not? Let's say they're for sure leaving. Why not throw that Hail Mary when they're at 30 to 35 yards yet and they're leaving? Why not throw that Hail Mary if they're gone anyway at 30 to 35? Don't move quick, but get turned around to shoot if you need to, or resituated or whatever when they're already leaving and you have no choice but to get a shot off, when they're at 30, 35, and make that body language move. Yeah, I think, we had, granted it was a tower blind, but we had multiple people getting up and folding chairs and opening windows and everything with 7 turkeys at 40 yards, and we were able to pull it off. And then a few other times on run and gun timber setups, there's an example where I had a hen at 5 yards, and I'm sitting there filming her, and there were no gobblers around, so I kind of wanted to see what I could get away with, and honestly moved quite a bit, but they were all slow, deliberate movements. None of them were quick and fast twitched. And yeah, I think you can move more than you need to if they're slow and deliberate. And why not move if that's the only chance you have to get a shot off? I think it's beneficial. I'm going to do that every time, and if you spook them, you spook them. But if they were leaving anyway and not going to come in, I don't think there's any harm, any foul. Number 9, if they saw you and didn't come in off the roost, stay patient. They can certainly come back exactly to where they heard you calling that morning. Perfect example was kind of what I had already touched on. Those turkeys hung up at 100 yards in the morning, and they basically, I think they make a mental note of it. Basically, they make a mental note. Okay, there were hens here and they were calling this morning. I'm going to stay with my live hens until they kick me off, and then I'm going to go check out the area where those other hens were susceptible and calling to me in the morning. So that's exactly what those 2 gobblers did that morning. They went off with their hens in the woods, and they came right back silently to where we had been calling at them in the morning, and were set up on them. They just right on top of where we were, and we weren't patient enough and tried to make another move and move the blind, and they ended up not being there. But and then another example is those exact turkeys. So we're set up on the other side of the field now, and they're looking for the hens that were calling at them. So they're on the other end of the field now, and we're trying to get them pulled in our way. And then this was another example of decoy placement too. So we're trying to get them pulled in. They're in the corner of this field, and they sit there for 20 to 30 minutes. One of them strutting, one of them looking our way. And they were trying to make a decision if they go into the woods there and look for where they thought those hens, which was us calling at them in the morning, had gone, or come check us out. And we just stayed persistent calling, a few sequences, aggressive, not aggressive, all that. Just read their body language. And I think what did it was we threw like 3 or 4 gobbles at them with, I don't know, every 3 minutes or so for like a 15-minute sequence. And that really piqued their interest. As soon as we started gobbling, that really got them, like, piqued their interest. And I think that's, midday. It was 9:30, 10. So they're saying, okay, if a gobbler's still with the hen, she's, susceptible. Let's go check it out. And then we shut up. We got super quiet. And as soon as we got quiet for like 5-10 minutes, they came on a string. And that was really cool to see because they were super hesitant for 20-30 minutes. And all we did was pique their curiosity. And turkeys are so curious. If you pique their curiosity, they're coming to figure out what's going on. So they both come following the tree line straight to us. And unfortunately, our decoy wasn't placed in the best spot because we thought they were going to come from our right. And they ended up coming straight on left. And so our decoy was actually in a slight dip from the area they were coming from. And they were coming on a string. We called softly to let them know we were where we were. And then they started skirting us at like 60, 70 yards because they couldn't see that decoy. They started getting nervous, like, what's going on? And so that's an example of, if they're hesitant or aren't picking you or, anything like that, just, stay persistent calling and wait them out. They're very curious and want to know what's going on at all times, especially when their hens leave them that midday time frame. And then that was a huge decoy placement learner as well. We thought they were going to come from the right, and they didn't. So our decoy was only set up for the right, whereas we possibly could have made a better decoy setup for both directions. And then, number 10, just keep on them. It can take one setup. It could be the dumbest bird you've ever seen, comes in right on a string, or it could take 30 setups, and they aren't susceptible to calling whatsoever. They want no interest with you. They have live hens. They're henned up. Like, it's just, there's so many factors that go into their mood and, them coming in perfect, and you being able to shoot where they come in, all of that. Just, you have to stay on them. They're very curious. They're going to keep coming. I think they have short-term memory. Even if you spook them, you may have a chance at them going forward. I think you have, like, turkey hunting is something where you fail until you succeed. Obviously, you can get those one and done. Like we had a hunt, we were done in the first 30 minutes. You can get those, or it can take you, 5-7 days of hunting hard, 10 setups a day, and you finally get them. But yeah, it's never the same, in my opinion. It's always the way they're feeling, the way, the group they're with is feeling, the weather, how you want to hunt them, all that. But yeah, just keep on them, keep failing until you get them. So yeah, that's my 10 turkey tips that I wanted to go over after going on a few hunts here. Go over them, quick summary here, and get out of here. So is make sure your decoys are placed in the as visible of a spot as possible. Number 2 was you're never going to beat live hens. Act accordingly. Number 3, best way I've seen to call in a hen, if you need to, is to cut them off during their calling sequence. Number 4 was know the terrain and what can hang a bird up, and exactly where that is. Number 5 was don't give up so easy if gobblers are hesitant or don't pick you right away. Number 6 was double check your setup before the birds come in. You need to be able to shoot as many angles as possible. Number 7 was be ready to shoot. Don't necessarily wait on the perfect opportunity like you see a strutter at 15 yards in the decoys. Number 8 was don't be afraid to move if you need to, even if they're close. Do what you need to move and get that shot. Number 9 was if they saw you and didn't come straight in off the rooster right away, stay patient. They can certainly, and I've seen it multiple times, they can certainly come back to where they heard you calling in the morning. And number 10, just keep on them. Keep going at them. Cool. So that's going to wrap up this quick episode, summarizing some turkey thoughts I had. Hope you enjoyed. Catch you on the next one.